Dog's Life, written by author T.G.BALLARD. In the gritty underbelly of the city that never sleeps, there lived a pit bull named Cain. His life was a paradox, a cruel juxtaposition of brutality and affection. Cain, powerful and robust, had been born into a world where the twisted desires of his owner, Cash, dictated his destiny. Cash, a man with a reputation for being both charismatic and ruthless, was the puppeteer behind Cain's tragic existence. On the surface, he appeared to love Cain, feeding him the finest cuts of meat, showering him with expensive collars, and boasting of Cain's strength to anyone who would listen. But behind this facade of affection lay a sinister truth. Cash had trained Cain meticulously, honing his natural aggression into a lethal weapon. In the shadowy corners of an underground fighting ring, Cain's destiny played out. Cash would lead him there, a twisted grin on his face, as the crowd roared with anticipation. Cain, with his rippling muscles and piercing eyes, was a sight to behold. Cash relished the admiration and fear his dog elicited from those who witnessed the savage spectacles that unfolded in the ring. To Cash, Cain was a symbol of his power and dominance, a pawn in a high-stakes game he reveled in. But behind closed doors, Cain's life was far from the glamorous image Cash portrayed. The lavish meals he enjoyed were but crumbs from Cash's table, a meager reward for the brutality he was forced to endure. Cain's nights were haunted by nightmares, vivid and relentless, as the trauma of his existence weighed heavily on his soul. In his sleep, he would whimper and twitch, reliving the horrors of the fighting ring and the conditional love of his owner, Cash, who saw him as nothing more than a tool for his own twisted satisfaction. In the dimly lit arena, the air was thick with tension as Cain, the powerful pit bull, stood at the center of a blood-stained ring. The crowd's frenzied cheers echoed in his ears, mingling with the pounding of his heart. Cain's opponent, a snarling, equally fearsome canine, circled him, teeth bared in a display of primal aggression. The two dogs were fighters, trained to battle to the death for the amusement of their twisted spectators. Cash, Cain's owner and puppeteer, watched with glee from the sidelines, his eyes gleaming with sadistic satisfaction. He had honed Cain's natural aggression into a lethal weapon, and tonight was the climax of his cruel endeavors. As the fight began, the arena erupted into chaos. Cain and his opponent lunged at each other with a ferocity that left no room for hesitation. The clash of teeth and muscle was brutal, a dance of survival and brutality. The crowd roared in approval, lost in the violent spectacle. But amidst the chaos, something shifted within Cain. In the midst of the relentless battle, a flicker of awareness pierced through the haze of aggression. He saw the pain in his opponent's eyes, mirrored by his own, and realized the cruelty of this existence. It was a moment of clarity in the midst of chaos. With a sudden change of heart, Cain released his grip on his opponent and stepped back. His rival, bewildered by this unexpected reprieve, hesitated for a moment, before being called off by the referee. The arena fell silent, the crowd's enthusiasm replaced by confusion. Cash's face twisted in anger and disbelief as he watched his prized fighter refuse to take another life. "Finish him," he screamed, his voice a harsh command, but Cain stood his ground, defiance burning in his eyes. In that moment, Cain made a decision that would change his life forever. He turned and walked away from the ring, leaving the bewildered crowd behind. He had tasted enough bloodshed, and he couldn't bear to be a pawn in Cash's brutal game any longer. Cash, however, was not one to accept defeat easily. As Cain made his way out of the arena, his owner's rage knew no bounds. He stormed after Cain, cursing and shouting, but the pit bull kept moving. His heart was set on a new beginning, free from the violence that had defined his life. Days turned into weeks as Cain wandered the gritty streets of New York. He found shelter in abandoned buildings and scrounged for food wherever he could. The scars of his past were etched deep into his body and soul, but he was determined to leave that life behind. As for Cash, his rage and frustration only grew with each passing day. He had lost his prized fighter, and his reputation as a ruthless underground kingpin was at stake. Desperation drove him to dark places, and he began to seek out Cain with a vengeance. When he finally tracked Cain down, his anger knew no bounds. He cornered the pit bull in a desolate alley, a sinister grin twisting his face. "You thought you could run from me, huh?" he snarled. But Cain had changed. The dog that once fought for survival now fought for freedom. He faced Cash with a newfound resolve, determined to protect the life he had chosen for himself. Cain had endured years of torment and cruelty at the hands of Cash, but now, with his newfound determination, he was ready to fight back. As Cash lunged at him, Cain's instincts took over. His teeth clamped onto Cash's arm, his jaws strong and unrelenting. Cash howled in agony as blood spurted from the wound. Desperation and pain filled Cash's eyes as he reached into his pocket, pulling out a gun. His face contorted with anger and fear, he aimed it at Kane, ready to end this brutal confrontation once and for all. In that harrowing moment, with the gun trembling in Cash's hand and Kane's teeth locked onto his arm, time seemed to slow down. Kane's survival instincts kicked into high gear as he tightened his grip on Cash's arm, refusing to release it despite the searing pain. With all his strength, he twisted Cash's arm, causing the gun to discharge. A loud gunshot echoed through the desolate alley, and Kane felt a searing pain in his side as the bullet grazed him. Blood began to trickle from the wound, but adrenaline coursed through his veins, numbing the pain. Kane knew he couldn't let up. Kane's determination and survival instincts were unwavering. With a violent shake, he redirected his powerful jaws from Cash's arm to his leg, clamping down with a relentless grip. Cash's screams of agony filled the alley as he punched and begged for Kane to release him, but Kane held firm, unyielding in his resolve to protect his newfound freedom. As the intense struggle continued, the sound of approaching sirens grew louder, and soon, a group of police officers arrived at the scene with their guns drawn, aimed at the seemingly vicious canine, all ready to intervene and end the violent attack. Kane finally released his grip on Cash as he grew weak from blood loss. "Shoot him, shoot him. What are you waiting for? Kill that son of a bitch," Cash screamed. But fate had other plans. Unbeknownst to Cash, a witness had been watching from the shadows of the alley in horror. "Officers, I saw everything," the witness exclaimed. "It was that guy who abused that dog, not the other way around. I'm the one who called you." The officers lowered their weapons, their attention now focused on the witness's testimony. With this newfound information, the situation took a dramatic turn as the truth about Cash's cruelty came to light. The police began to assess the situation more carefully, realizing that Kane was not the aggressor in this ordeal. Kane, though victorious, had not escaped unscathed. His body bore the marks of the brutal struggle. Blood dripped from his mouth, as well as his left side, and his fur was matted and stained. He had fought not just for his own freedom, but for the countless animals who had suffered under Cash's reign. The witness, who had been instrumental in bringing Cash to justice, approached Kane cautiously, offering a gentle hand. Kane, initially wary of humans due to his past experiences, sniffed the outstretched hand and tentatively allowed himself to be examined. It was clear that Kane needed immediate medical attention, and the witness was determined to help. Meanwhile, the police officers secured the scene, gathering evidence and taking statements from the witness and Kane's abuser. Cash, his arm and leg bandaged and his pride shattered, was led away in handcuffs. His reign of cruelty finally at an end. Kane was transported to a nearby animal hospital, where compassionate veterinarians and technicians worked tirelessly to tend to his wounds. The witness stayed by Kane's side throughout the process, providing comfort and reassurance. News of the dramatic confrontation between Kane and Cash spread quickly through the community, garnering attention from local media outlets. People were outraged by the cruelty that had been exposed, and support for Kane poured in from all corners. Donations flooded in to cover his medical expenses, and offers of adoption came from families eager to provide him with the loving home he had never known. Kane's story became a symbol of resilience and triumph over adversity, and he became an inspiration for countless others who had suffered from abuse. His journey from a pit bull used for illegal fights to a survivor who had stood up against his tormentor touched the hearts of many. In the days that followed, Cash faced a series of legal battles. He was charged not only with cruelty to animals but also with possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. The witness's testimony and the evidence collected at the scene were damning, leaving little room for him to escape the consequences of his actions. Cash's trial became a high-profile case, drawing widespread attention and igniting a national conversation about animal cruelty and the need for stricter penalties for those who abused animals. Advocates for animal rights rallied outside the courthouse, demanding justice for Kane and all animals who had suffered like him. The trial reached its conclusion several months later. Cash was found guilty on all charges, and the judge delivered a harsh sentence. He was ordered to serve a significant prison term, pay substantial fines, and was banned from ever owning or being in proximity to animals for the rest of his life. It was a landmark decision that sent a clear message. Cruelty to animals would not be tolerated. Kane's recovery, both physically and emotionally, was a long and challenging journey. His wounds healed, but the scars of his past would always be a part of him. Yet, he had found something he had never known: love, compassion, and a true home. The witness who had saved him from his darkest hour became his adoptive parent, offering him the safe and loving family he had always deserved. With time, patience, and unwavering support, Kane's trust in humans was gradually restored. He learned to enjoy the simple pleasures of life, a warm bed, tasty meals, and the gentle touch of a kind hand. Despite his past, he emerged as a gentle and loving companion, a testament to the resilience of animals who had endured unspeakable suffering. Kane's story continued to inspire change. In the wake of his ordeal, stricter animal cruelty laws were enacted, and awareness about the horrors of underground dogfighting rings grew. Kane's triumph became a symbol of hope, and a reminder that even in the darkest of circumstances, the spirit of resilience could shine through, illuminating the path toward a more compassionate world for animals everywhere. Follow T.G. Ballard on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, T.G. Ballard Books.